Hey, it's James, Father's Rights and Resources, hashtag how I got custody. Everybody should know about this thing called, well, this debate between these two Timothy guys. So I'm going to call it the Timothy debates. It can be applied or used in family court depending on whether you're falsely accused, whether you have, if you have a criminal record, or if you're just, somebody just slinging mud at you or saying you're abusive in your family court case. So these two Timothys, Timothy Lynch and Timothy Sandefur, had a debate, not in person, but on paper. They both wrote these papers that are published. And so they debated back and forth over whether the plea bargaining system is constitutional. And I'll get to how people can use this and how I would use it in court. The plea bargaining system, when you cop a plea in a criminal case, you waive your right to a jury trial and you waive your right to appeal. Those are constitutional rights you're waiving. Now, who out here waives your free speech rights or your right to worship or go to a church that you want to, or your right to have a gun? Nobody runs around waiving their rights to anything. This is the only place where I know where you sign something and agree to waive your constitutional rights, okay? So, the plea bargaining system, you cop a plea, let's say you're charged with domestic violence, and you didn't do it, but you're worried about facing 5 years in jail, or they offer you, just take this anger management class, and then get a little bit of treatment, and as long as you're in compliance for a year, it will drop off. Now, specifically with domestic violence, Joe Biden's Violence Against Women Act gives that prosecutor bonus money and matches the funds of what it costs to prosecute you. Let's say it costs them $3,000 to work on the case, pay the paralegal, do some research. Is $3,000. The Violence Against Women Act, the federal government will give that prosecutor's office $3,000. From what I know, gather, and have heard. They try and keep that stuff a secret. So they want to push as many men as possible to cop a plea. They will never push a woman to cop a plea on domestic violence because there is no Violence Against Men Act. They don't make any money from that. Just a little side bonus point right there. So, Timothy Lynch said the plea bargaining system is corrupt and it's unconstitutional and all this other stuff. So he wrote a paper about it. Timothy Sandefur wrote In Defense of Plea Bargaining. And he wrote why we need to keep it. These prosecutors got a handful of they got their hands full with countless cases to prosecute, and we need to help them, efficiently go through these cases and put the bad guys away. Well, think about it. What's been the latest thing about the criminal justice system where everybody's talking about that's corrupt and abusive and stuff? All these nonviolent crimes and possession of marijuana and 3 strikes you're out that have locked people up. So the system or kids for cash. Joe Biden pardoned a judge who imprisoned children in juvenile court, and they didn't have attorneys, they didn't get due process, and he got $1 million from the juvenile detention facility. It's a brand new facility. They paid him a total of $1 million. Every time you send a kid our way, we're going to give you some money. So he ushered in these kids, and he had innocent kids going there, or a kid who got caught smoking pot, who was in there for 6 months, who ended up killing himself when he got out because he was so messed up. He was a star wrestler. This woman is famous for talking, the judge's name is Sarah Velli or something like that. And then there's another judge who doesn't get as much attention. I don't know why. But this is our criminal justice system. And if that actually happened in one place, it's happening everywhere. So, one guy said the plea bargaining system's corrupt. Another guy is defending it. If you read the paper that was written by Timothy Sandefur, all you need to read is the first paragraph for the point that I'm making. You don't even need to read both papers from both guys. But if you Google Timothy Sandefur in Defense of Plea Bargaining, and I think Timothy Lynch's paper is called The Case Against Plea Bargaining. If I was home, I'd show you guys on the computer, but you can search it. if you got the time. The opening paragraph. Now remember, this guy's defending the system because we want to efficiently, we want to help prosecutors that are so busy and it's overloading. Well, here's the problem. Why don't you just knock off and stop wasting time on all the non-violent stuff and just go after the rapists and the gangbangers and the politicians trafficking children behind closed doors or whatever bribes they're taking? That's your problem. It's the state's burden to put bad people away. So focus on the ones that are actual good cases instead of all these other piddly things, and use your powers to protect people from violent criminals. But they're in the business, there's a connection in the business to fill up the jails because jail is business, the prison industrial complex. It's the burden on the state. We shouldn't have to help the state and give them a handicap or an extra edge or leverage to be able to do their job. They should pick the cases that are real legitimate cases and fight those cases. That's my take on it. But Timothy Sandefur says we need to help them. And the opening paragraph of his paper, and the only reason I know about this is because I took a class when I went back to school, and it was an assignment. We were supposed to read both sides and then make arguments on both sides, or pick the side we're against and make an argument for it, some tricky little thing or whatever. So after I went through my court battle, I went back and got my bachelor's degree in law and justice from Central Washington University. I took the pre-law track in case I was ever going to go to law school, which I never did. And the chair said, oh, you can't do the pre-law track. You sucked when you went to college before. You're not ready for that. You should pick the general track. So this lady tried to discourage me in it. I wrote a letter to them, and she wasn't working there anymore after that. I don't know if I got her fired or there's enough complaints from other people. Anyway, the first paragraph, Timothy Sandefur said, yeah, prosecutors find loopholes in the system. They bully defendants. They take advantage of somebody who has their first criminal case and they're scared to go to jail for the first time, so they cop a plea. They know how to lie and deceive and use trickery. But even though that happens, the benefits of the plea bargaining system outweigh the detriments or the problems like this. So my main point is that Timothy Sandefur, a legal scholar who talks about this stuff all the time, admits that prosecutors abuse their authority, engage in trickery, lies, deceit, and loopholes in order to put innocent people away and coerce them into copping a plea. So if I'm in family court, and let's say I copped a plea to a domestic violence case and my public defender bullied me, and there's all kinds of well-documented problems with the public defense team or the public defense system because they're juggling 40 cases a day, and they say, hey, cop a plea here and you only go to jail for a month instead of 3 years in prison. And you're like, but I didn't do it. They're like, you're going to lose. Cop a plea here. And then so they just churn them out and you're just in the system, right? So if I went into family court and I got a DV on my record, I'll say, Your Honor, I pretty much took an Alford plea and I was bullied and strong-armed into it. An Alford plea is when you sign a plea bargain, but you maintain your innocence, but you say that I'm signing this because I'm worried that the evidence against me will prejudice me, or the jury might be so prejudiced against me, or there might be some trickery that'll bamboozle the jury into thinking I'm guilty. So I'm maintaining my innocence, but I'm worried that the jury might be tainted or they might be bamboozled, and then I'll get convicted. So I'll say, look, I pretty much copped an Alford plea. I was coerced and bullied into it. And like everybody knows, prosecutors abuse their power to scare people into copping a plea. Timothy Sandefur wrote it in Defense of Plea Bargaining. He was defending the system, and he admitted to corruption by abusive prosecutors. So if the criminal courts, where you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you're guilty, if the criminal courts have corruption that bullies a bunch of innocent people into signing a plea, and prosecutors lie, deceive, and cheat and abuse their authority, and they're really violating the rules of professional conduct and committing all kinds of ethical violations, if that happens and it's prevalent, and the guy defending the plea bargaining system says this is a problem, then of course it's a problem, and the whole system is a problem. So why do we just pretend that even family court